Okay, so you guys can see this side, right? Everything. Oh, actually, I have the Zoom stuff open. Okay, there we go. And then, yeah. So, for example, I'm actually going to be showing you guys something else that I was testing on my own on the side, um, and this is something that Jacob also was showing you guys as well. So the current version of this looks different from what we have committed and pushed to the what is it to the neuroscience Git repository on GitHub. So this looks a little bit different on the version that we have on there because we have updated it to the most recent app development meeting. We had October 26, 2020. Of course, it's 2021 now. Um, but so we have symptom categories here. And then the physical view, you guys might not see a difference, but there was a slight difference. The frame is a little smaller on here so that it looks neater and tighter here, and as well as the new symptoms. So Jacob, this one's actually blue for me. Yeah, maybe it was just the canvas editor that looked different for you. Yeah, and my fans are going on really hard right now. I'm sorry if you guys hear that in the background, but yeah. So this was just the thing. Oh, Senora A is here. So this was the thing that we had, and we have I showing up. I'm just going to do that as an example symptom. So the other thing that I was thinking that we could be brainstorming, but if you guys have
Don't raise your hand.
if you guys have any ideas, you can email us. It was just that should we have recent symptoms that they added show up here as well if they wanted to do it again, or if they deleted it by accident or something along that line? And should we be able to type several of them and have it show up in here? So you'll notice that this is sorted by alphabetical order. Then I can actually delete these. And of course, these functions are not built in yet for the one that we have on the Git repository, but we will be getting there. And same with this one, when we check mark, we can actually submit it, then go to reports and find it here. Exact time, seconds, and date will show up. Same thing here. The formatting is all off, so that's also up for brainstorming ideas. Yeah. So that's basically what we are getting towards. But first, we need to get the core data started. So I will not be using the simulator after this point. So I'll just be having it all the way. So oh, I must have done something here. Yeah. I added the frame here, so it was a little tighter for the sentence list. And then, so the first thing to get started is actually adding a data model. So if we go to new file, oh, new file, you guys might not have to see it, but if you go to new file, then you'll scroll down to core data and see that data model is selected here because I was playing around with it earlier. So data model is selected. By custom, we name it the same thing as our project. So right now I have it named as neuroscience dash dementia. So I will name this the same exact thing, and then I will create something. Okay. So this is the data model that we will be using. One thing is I suggest that you get the name, you match the name that I have, unless you want your own names to make it easier for you to understand. But there's this weird thing with core data. If you change the names after they are created, a lot of the times, like bugs happen. It's something behind the scenes that I don't know of, and a lot of people online have found it to be some issue as well. So try not to change anything after you have created the data model. Yeah, so then we have an entity here. An entity is basically, let me add an entity first, and I am going to call it um, P symptom entity. So this thing for me will stand for physical symptom entity. And I will be creating the same thing for all of for mental and social as well. And the reason why I decided to split it apart is because of how the entities are and the attributes. So I'm going to be giving an example. So entities, you can think of as let's say, an object in the real world. You can also think of it as an object even in Java, like if you guys have done coding before. So an object, let's say it's a car. A car could have different ways of, you could have different ways of describing a car in terms of like adjectives. So for example, a car could have a different color, different size, different model, different number of tires or shape of, or not shape of tires, size of tires, and so on. So those are the attributes. The adjectives that you would be describing the car with would be attributes, and the car itself would be an entity. So that's essentially what it's like, analogous to the entities and attributes that we use in core data. So that's like a way of thinking about it, a more intuitive way of thinking about it. And then when we add an attribute, we might, when we save our symptoms, like using the check marks, there are different things that we want to save. We want to save the name, we want to save the date that it was created, and we also want to save the, maybe like the state, whether or not it was checked. If it was checked, it would be true. If it's not checked, it would be false. So I'm going to be calling it this, even though it's underneath the entity, even though the attribute is underneath the entity, I'm going to have P in front of it just so when I'm using it in the code, it'll be easier for me to identify it. So that's the string name. Then it will be a string, right? That's the name. There's also P, let's call it checked state for whether or not it is checked, and it will be a Boolean. And then there's another one that's P created. So there's actually a date class here in Swift UI that's automatically built in. So that's what shows the date and the time, or the time, yeah, date and time in seconds, basically, hour, minute, and seconds. So that's what we have for p-SYMPTOM-entity. However, this step is very crucial because a lot of the times this thing automatically, this is called code generation. It is automatically set to class definition, which means the database automatically creates a file for p-SYMPTOM-entity behind the scenes. However, because we want to modify it to fit our own kind of like way of writing it, we're going to do manual session. So just make sure you always have that. And this is another thing in the Swift documentation. Um, I honestly, to be honest, I'm not so sure why we have to do this, but it's another thing where it's like, it's just set for the computer, for the machine behind the scenes to understand what you're doing. So you have to set it to current product module. That's the only thing in the dropdown anyways. And then nothing else here you would be touching. All right. So we're set with that one. And you can create the mSymptom entity, sSymptom entity on your own. We won't be actually covering that part because it's just basically a copy, and all you have to do is change the letters in front. Okay, so we're done with setting up at least the first entity that we will be using. Then let me create a new. Let me create a new group. Okay, I'm going to be calling this core data, since that's the data framework that we will be using. And I realized that I don't have data or the core data model underneath core data. I'm not so sure if me changing that will automatically cause an error as well. Hopefully it won't. But sometimes these things are really finicky, so that might happen. So next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a file, and I'm going to be creating, it's actually a Swift file, so core data would be using Swift files, but all we have to do really is, I also took some of the code from online, some of the research that me and Jacob, we did earlier, and then we just find it. Oh, okay. It'll just be a Swift file, so we're going to be importing core data, and I will be, it's kind of long. So I will be copying and pasting this from the side and have the code on the side for reference. But basically, the first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that the class name is the same as the file name. And then these kind of like attributes are things that make the system able to recognize what type of like object it is. So in this case, NS managed object, this is actually a specific thing to core data. We won't be diving into the details of that, but notice here that we are also going to be defining the variables that we, or the attributes that we put into the data model earlier. So I'll just be copy and pasting the same exact thing and then changing the names. Okay. And I'm not really doing this in a particular order. You guys might have something different. Oh, school and date. So this next part I will be copying and pasting. It's really long, but make sure that your names are all correct. So p-symptom entity shows up several times here. And this is basically another thing that's working behind the scenes. We don't have to know too much about this. Just call this one p-symptom name because this is what you will be calling it as. So this is like the key to identify. Everything else you guys can just copy it down. Yeah. So that's setting it up. I if you guys can work on it on the side, or maybe just screenshot it so you guys can type it up. I will be creating a new file right now. So let's see. Because when we do core data, sometimes there's a lot of errors that might happen. We always want to save the original file and just create a new file to test it, test the core data. So just as a good practice, I am going to be creating a new file called physical test. And this time it is Swift UI view. So I'll call it physical test. So just the test is just to know that it is for core data. Yeah. And then, so we will be having, let's see, that's, yes, this part. I'm going to copy and paste everything from below into here. So we basically have the same thing. Make sure to rewrite the class name, physical test and physical test. Or in this case, it's struct and a class, they're kind of, they're similar. So, but SwiftUI would call it a struct. So, yeah, so make sure the names are the same. And then we do have physical test up here, just for reference. This won't actually affect your code. Yeah, and everything's good. So I'm going to do a little explaining here for now as to what we did here, because this is the main thing that we want to target. So right now we have hard coded into the system all of the symptoms. We have it here. But what if we wanted, or what if the user wanted to add in a new symptom? How would we be appending it to the array? And how would the array update if all of a sudden the user wanted to delete it? So that would go through core data. And we don't want to have to hard code this. We want to give them a standard set of values and then have them be able to add or delete their free will without having to do anything extra. The system will be building it for them. And here we have it so that we loop through, sorry, here for each, we loop through everything in the array. This thing is analogous to if you had it with p symptoms, because all we're trying to do here is the size of the array, but we're looping it through and then outputting the name of the array. I mean, of the strings of each of the symptoms. And we don't want to hard code that. So this is where core data comes in. But first, I'm also going to be creating another file. Yes, and in core data, there is a lot of file creation. Uh, Wait, do you guys see that screen share is paused? No? Okay, it's showing them that on my end. I am not so sure why. I'm gonna stop it for a second because the file wouldn't show up. The new file wouldn't. Yep. Um, there we go. Okay, now this is showing. So I'm gonna create a Swift UI view and I'm going to be calling it mocked data. So this is where we would be giving a standard set of data that we want to show up. Right now, this is only for the physical symptoms. We'll be creating it later for social and mental. But basically in here, we want it to show that we have the symptoms down. And all of this has to go through core data. So it's a lot of work actually. So let's see. As usual, we will have the environment object environment so that all of this can be accessed globally. And then let's call it environment um, manage object context. Call it manage object context. And then have another one in another environment object called the state. So it depends, I will be talking about this later as well, but it depends on the state that the application is currently in, whether or not we want to reset the data and all that. Eventually, we don't want to have a reset data function for the users to use, but for now, for our testing purposes and debugging purposes, there will be a reset. So that's, oh, I just entered a thing, but it will be called state. And this thing is not defined. This is actually another file. And I will also be creating that as well. Um, I'm going to be calling it app state for what I have just written down. And I will be putting it up with like the app delegate and all that. I currently don't have a good system of organizing this, but I generally go physical, mental, and social, and then the rest of it I alphabetize. So that's what I have right now. And then actually, sorry, I'm gonna delete it, and this will be a Swift file, not a Swift UI file. So I'm gonna be calling it app state. And so I'm going to be dragging it up there. Okay. So I will be importing Swift UI as well, just like what we did. And then the class is called app state, and it is an observable object. So it's basically that the app will, this is basically the type of the class right now. And basically everything in here that we would have is going to kind of like specify what state the app is in currently. So right now we have it as this. There are things called enums, which is basically a case by case thing. So enum, and I will also be explaining that. Um, so the syntax is actually you have it as case. So when we have an enum, it's a case by case thing. When it is set to when we say that it is equal to reset, then we can say that in the mock to data file that for reset we want to do certain things. And when it is in the no reset case or AKA state of the app, then mock to data will also do something else as well. So each of these actually will specify what state the app is currently in. Yeah, and you can rename these as anything you want. I could have renamed it as like Jacob, for example, and it would have still worked for our purposes. Yeah, so let's go back to mock to data. And one second. I will be copying and pasting things as well because it's a lot of stuff to write down all at once. But we will not be showing in this mock data file. We don't want to show any sort of view. We don't want to have any displays, and so this will not be our typical like file that we would normally build the app on. This is just behind the scenes, working behind the scenes. So when I say this, um, notice that here we have state. So this is a variable that is, I called it the same exact variable that the file is actually defined or called as. And so when we go back here, the app state has its own variable so that we would figure out whether or not it is equal to reset or no reset. I have it currently set as reset, meaning that every single time we actually, well, when we create the reset button, every single time we create the reset button, it will automatically have that reset function. If I were to do the no reset, then it would do the opposite based on what we'll be coding afterwards. Yeah, and so with the reset, we have to go through core data. So here, this is a syntax that's actually inside. I kind of forget. It's either an app delegate or a scene delegate. It is probably app delegate. Yes, core data. So this, all of this stuff is like automatically created when you have the create the project. So if you wanted to save things, then you would have save context, and that would be from core data. So all of that can be called already inside the delegate. So that is what we will have. And actually, I'm going to be having something slightly different here. I'm not going to be doing this line of code first because we don't have everything set down, but I'm just going to be starting off with the creation of standardizing the symptoms in the list. And here you'll notice that I actually have a new entity that we didn't create. So we will be going back to create that. And with this, the reason why I have it called something different is because here I want to say that the symptom is specifically in a list. Whereas in the other case, I only want to say what type of symptom that we saved it as. So in the other case, it was just P symptom entity, and all we want to know is that it is a physical symptom. It was saved at a certain time and it has a certain state. Here we want to have another entity, another category, aka category, that saves all of the symptom names so that we don't have to, oh, yeah, I will be wrapping up soon, so that we don't have to hard code all of the symptom names. So here, this is kind of like syntax essentially. And all of this, like same with the variable, the p name, we will be creating that one after I finish writing this. I will have only one written down here just to save us some time. And the thing is initialized as false. Its current state is initialized as false. And notice it says you cannot find p symptom entity in the scope, p list entity, symptom list entity in the scope. That's because we haven't created it yet. So we will be creating that. Sorry. So when we create a p symptom list entity, I will be renaming that p symptom list entity. And as customary, we also have entity at the end, just like we title the data model the same exact thing. Then we'll be adding attributes. We'll be adding an attribute, so p name, and once again it's a string for the name, and the same with let's say state instead of checked. And it will be a boolean, so whether or not it was checked or not. And after a while, this thing should probably go away. Oh, actually, I missed something. The reason why is because right now we don't have it called. Um, but yeah, so I'm just going to be creating another one as well for now, and then so that we have at least two symptoms down. And let's say this one is our second one, which is inability to wash body. Um, And yeah, so I might be missing something actually at the very end. But right now, at least for now, I will be saying core data manager dot shared dot save context. This is the same exact function that I was showing you guys was in the app delegate.
Okay, so this is sort of what we have so far. So this is just like, so I'll show you guys like some different pages, but we'll start on like new symptoms for now. And so do you guys have any like suggestions on maybe like stuff we should add, or like Ellie said we could have like maybe a better color scheme. I know that we do have like different colors for each of the um, like each of the symptoms. Like we have a different color for maybe social view. Um, you just need to look for a second. Like we have like a kind of a soft color here, and then you have like a different a different blue for new symptom. But are there any like changes you guys want to make or to the user interface? It's all good.
Yeah. Actually, when we were first doing this as well, it took us some time to even figure out the complete layout that we wanted, and we had to find inspiration from like existing apps online. This one, so a few suggestions I have, or like ideas as to where we can start brainstorming. Um, like right now, the add new symptom title is in line with the cancel and the done button. Should it be in line with those two buttons, or would it be below big like the other titles that you were looking at? So that's one thing. And two, another thing is what should the text field? Oh, Jacob, do you think you want to show them right now when you like type in um, a thing? Yeah. So you can actually type in something. Um,
Now it works.
oh yeah, because you're not in live preview. Yeah.
Oops. I it my computer is really slow for some reason, so sometimes I like click on it and then I
Yeah, same.
okay. So yeah, I can type stuff into here and then
Yeah,
uh,
that's the
I
text. And
um
then yeah,
okay. Yeah, I was also wondering like so about this like
white stuff.
white, yeah, the white area. Are you guys okay with that, or do you guys want that to sort of be um sort of like blend in with the background as well?
Um, that actually looks slightly different on mine. It's actually blue on mine. I'm not so sure why it's different
Yeah,
on
I
yours.
I figured I figured there's something wrong with mine because you have the edges ignoring safe area.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, so it should be blue. Okay, got
Yes.
it.
It should be.
Um,
But the
yeah,
other comment I had was, so Jacob right now is looking at, I'm not so sure what iPhone it is, but it is an older model, right? One of them with the home buttons. So if you look at the add button, it's a lot, like the height of it is a lot smaller than the text field. On mine, it's slightly closer in terms of height. But what would it look like? Would the height be like larger than the width, or would it be the other way around? And what would the text field look like? Would it be light gray or would it be white? Because right now it's more grayish than white. Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys don't have any like immediate thoughts of what the app's design would look like, including the user interface, we welcome you guys to kind of like test it out on your own. And if you have a good idea, you guys can email it to us. And I'll put the link or put the email address in the chat again. But it's the neurotech .amador@gmail.com. Email that you guys can use. Yeah, and last time, Ray, thank you, Ray, for sending us actually a design that he was thinking about based on one of our previous brainstorming sessions. So that was good. Yeah, yeah. So we welcome you guys to do that as well.